We are here with Tarek Souki, Senior Vice President, LNG Marketing and Trading from Tellurian. Hello, Tarek.
Hello, Jaime.
Well, I wanted to ask, what business models in the LNG market do you think are best to facilitate the growth in emerging markets?
I think the business model question is a very interesting one as we sit today in 2019. Our point-to-point SPA model, particularly on an oil indexation and then later on a Henry Hub indexation, is starting to disappear. And I think you're starting to see a replacement of that model by a more investment model where somebody invests in an ongoing project to be able to get LNG at a cost. And I think it's reflective of most commodity type projects around the world. The history of commodities have been financed this way for a very long time, and LNG is now just catching up. So I think you'll see more of that, and there was evidence of it this year as the 60 million tons of LNG projects that have taken FID this year, more than half of them were done on the balance sheets of either oil majors or big project sponsors without long-term contracts to backstop the actual project.
On the question of LNG, how do you see the evolution of the commoditization of LNG in the global marketplace?
Well, I think the new business models are actually part and parcel of this. As you start to see more liquidity come into the market and you start to see places like Australia develop up to 80 million tons, you have Qatar that's 77 wanting to go to 100, and then the US, which is currently about 60 million tons, which will grow eventually to about 150, maybe even 200 million tons, depending on what the focus of the Permian Basin gas production is. You're going to have a lot of different centers of supply in very different parts of the world that will facilitate this commoditization. You now have maybe a 2-day journey from any point of supply to any point of demand at a given moment because of the ships on the water. So it's already happening.
That's great. And well, going back to the subject of this year's conference, which is the energy transition, how do you see the role of gas and LNG versus cheap coal and renewables in these emerging markets?
Well, as we focus on a more carbon neutral future, or at least a very serious reduction in our carbon footprint around the world, I think it's imperative. We can't just say renewables and expect the problem to go away. The intermittency problem still has a long way to go to be fixed. And then at some point, batteries may be the solution to help renewables get their backstop, but then we still don't understand what the downside of having batteries and battery acid and things of that nature come in. So I think gas is the natural complement to a low carbon future, including renewables. Coal definitely hasn't been until you can perfect carbon capture, and even that, when you put that against gas, coal plus carbon capture against gas, then the cost becomes negligible for the coal side. And I think if countries and companies are very serious about climate change and wanting to make a real go at a lower carbon future, you have to have gas in the equation.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Tarek.